The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Sarah pushed her cart through the crowded aisles of Walmart. It was 11:47 p.m. on Black Friday, and the store was packed with bargain hunters clutching their shopping lists like battle plans. She'd been waiting in line since 6 p.m. for those discounted TVs, but something felt wrong. The woman in front of her hadn't moved in 5 minutes. Her head hung at an odd angle, drool pooling at her feet. "Excuse me," Sarah whispered, tapping her shoulder. The woman slowly turned around and Sarah's blood ran cold. Her eyes were completely white, skin gray and peeling, and when she opened her mouth, a low, hungry moan escaped. That's when Sarah noticed the screaming from electronics. Then the lights went out completely. What started as America's biggest shopping day was about to become its deadliest nightmare. When the undead rise in the aisles of Walmart, will anyone make it out alive? Or will Black Friday truly become the apocalypse? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and drop a comment about your favorite horror topic. We read every single one, and your suggestions might be our next terrifying tale. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as she stared into those milky white eyes. The woman's jaw hung slack, black veins spiderwebbing across her neck like twisted roots. The metallic smell of blood mixed with something else, something rotten, filled the air around them. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Sarah's voice cracked. She knew the answer before the words left her mouth. The infected woman lunged forward with inhuman speed, her yellowed fingernails raking across Sarah's forearm. Pain shot through her arm as she stumbled backward, knocking into a display of discounted phones. The plastic cases scattered across the floor like digital confetti. "Help! Someone help me!" Sarah screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the chaos erupting throughout the store. In electronics, a teenage employee named Marcus was restocking PlayStation games when he heard the first screams. He thought it was just typical Black Friday madness, maybe a fight over the last gaming console. But when old Mrs. Henderson from his neighborhood shuffled past the TV wall, her church dress soaked in blood, he knew this wasn't about discounted merchandise. Mrs. Henderson had been such a sweet lady, always bringing cookies to the church bake sale. Now she moved with jerky, unnatural steps, her head tilted at an impossible angle. When she spotted Marcus, her face twisted into a hungry snarl. "Mrs. Henderson," Marcus whispered, pressing himself against the wall of flat-screen TVs. "What happened to you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she let out that same bone-chilling moan Sarah had heard. And Marcus realized with growing horror that Mrs. Henderson wasn't the only one. Throughout the electronics section, customers and employees alike were changing. Their skin grew pale and mottled, their movements became erratic, and their eyes turned that awful empty white. The transformation was spreading like wildfire through the overcrowded store. In the clothing section, a young mother named Lisa was trying on a jacket for her toddler when the person in the fitting room next to her started making strange gurgling sounds. At first, she thought someone might be choking. "Are you all right in there?" she called out, her 2-year-old son Danny clinging to her leg. The sound stopped abruptly. Then came the scratching, fingernails clawing desperately at the fitting room walls. The plastic door rattled violently before bursting open, and what stumbled out barely resembled the businessman who had entered just minutes before. His expensive suit was torn and stained with something dark. His tie hung loose around his neck like a noose, and when he opened his mouth, a thick black substance oozed out. Danny started crying, somehow sensing the danger even at his young age. Lisa scooped up her son and ran toward the main aisle, but the infection had already spread there too. What had been orderly lines of Black Friday shoppers were now scenes of pure terror. People were screaming, running in every direction, trampling over fallen merchandise and each other in their desperation to escape. But escape was becoming impossible. The infected moved differently than normal people. They seemed to anticipate where the panicked crowds would flee. They herded the survivors like predators corralling prey, cutting off exits and forcing people deeper into the store's labyrinthine layout. Near the pharmacy, an elderly man named Robert was clutching his prescription bottle when he watched his wife of 43 years turn into something monstrous before his eyes. She'd been complaining of a headache all evening, but he'd convinced her to come shopping anyway. Now, as she stumbled toward him with blood trickling from her ears, he realized that headache had been something much worse. "Martha." His voice was barely a whisper. "Martha, it's me. It's Robert." But Martha was gone. Whatever looked back at him through those clouded eyes wasn't his beloved wife anymore. The store's PA system crackled to life, and a terrified voice echoed through the chaos. "Attention shoppers, please remain calm and proceed to the nearest exit in an orderly fashion. This is not a drill. Please evacuate the building immediately." But remaining calm was impossible when the exits were blocked by masses of the infected. They seemed drawn to the sounds of screaming and running, appearing wherever groups of survivors tried to gather. The automatic doors at the front entrance had malfunctioned during the panic, trapping dozens of people inside. Sarah had managed to find Marcus and Lisa, along with several other survivors who were still human. They huddled together near the garden center, using shopping carts as makeshift barriers. Danny had stopped crying and was eerily quiet, as if he understood that silence meant survival. "We need to get out of here," Marcus whispered, clutching a baseball bat he'd grabbed from the sporting goods section. "There's gotta be another way out." "The loading dock," Sarah said, pointing toward the back of the store. "There's a rear exit through the employee area, but getting there would mean crossing the entire length of the store, past countless aisles where infected shoppers wandered in search of fresh prey. Every shadow could hide another one of those things. Every corner could be their last." Lisa held Danny closer, feeling his tiny heartbeat against her chest. She'd come here looking for Christmas presents and birthday gifts. Now she was fighting just to keep her son alive long enough to see another dawn. The fluorescent lights flickered again, casting dancing shadows across the blood-stained floors. Somewhere in the darkness between the aisles, something was moving. Something that had once been human was now hunting them, drawn by the scent of fear and the promise of warm flesh. The infection was spreading, and Walmart had become ground zero for something far worse than any Black Friday stampede. The question wasn't whether they'd find good deals anymore. It was whether they'd survive the night. The journey to the loading dock began like a nightmare game of hide and seek. Sarah led the group, her wounded arm throbbing with each heartbeat. Behind her, Marcus gripped his baseball bat so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Lisa carried Danny, who had buried his face in her shoulder, while Robert brought up the rear, still clutching Martha's purse like a lifeline to his former world. They moved through the pet supplies aisle, stepping carefully around scattered dog food cans and broken fish tanks. The aquarium section had been completely destroyed during the initial panic, leaving puddles of murky water and dying goldfish gasping on the linoleum floor. The sound of their breathing seemed deafeningly loud in the sudden quiet. That's when they heard it, the wet, dragging sound of footsteps just around the corner. Sarah held up her hand and everyone froze. Through the gaps in the shelving, they could see a figure shuffling past. It was wearing a Walmart vest, probably an employee who had been working the Black Friday shift. Now it moved with that same jerky, unnatural gait they'd all learned to fear. Marcus raised his bat ready to strike, but Sarah shook her head. One noise could bring dozens of them. They waited, counting the seconds until the infected employee disappeared down another aisle. Only then did they continue moving. The sporting goods section offered a grim shopping opportunity. Sarah grabbed a hunting knife, testing its weight in her good hand. Marcus found a crossbow with a few bolts, though he'd never used one before. Even Robert, despite his age, picked up a metal golf club, hefting it like he was preparing for the worst round of his life. "Stay close," Sarah whispered as they approached the main thoroughfare that would take them to the back of the store. "And whatever happens, don't get separated." But the infected had other plans. The main aisle was a massacre. Bodies lay scattered among overturned shopping carts and trampled merchandise. Black Friday doorbuster signs were soaked in blood, their bright yellow price tags now macabre decorations in a retail wasteland. But worse than the bodies were the sounds, low moaning echoing from every direction, getting closer with each passing second. "There." Lisa pointed toward a gap between two zombies near the pharmacy. "We can make it if we run." They sprinted across the open space, their footsteps echoing off the high ceiling. Danny started to cry, the sound carrying through the store like a dinner bell for the hungry dead. Almost immediately, infected shoppers began emerging from the aisles, drawn by the noise. A woman in a torn evening dress stumbled out from cosmetics, her face a mess of smeared makeup and dried blood. A teenage boy, still wearing his Black Friday shopping list around his wrist, blocked their path with arms outstretched and fingers grasping. Marcus swung his bat with all his strength, connecting with the boy's skull with a sickening crack. "I'm sorry," he whispered, even as the body crumpled to the floor. "I'm so sorry." They pushed forward, using shopping carts as battering rams to clear a path through the growing crowd of infected. Sarah's knife found its mark again and again, while Robert surprised everyone by wielding his golf club with the precision of a man who'd spent decades perfecting his swing. The grocery section became their temporary refuge. They barricaded themselves behind a wall of shopping carts and cereal boxes, catching their breath while the infected pounded against their makeshift fortress. Cans of soup and bags of chips scattered across the floor as their barrier shook under the assault. "The loading dock is just past the bakery," Sarah panted, pointing through the chaos. "Maybe 50 yards. 50 yards that might as well have been 50 miles. The infected were everywhere now, streaming in from every aisle like a black tide of death and decay. Some still wore their Black Friday shopping clothes, designer jackets and expensive sneakers now stained with blood and worse things. Their cereal box fortress wouldn't hold much longer. The infected were climbing over shopping carts, their reaching hands getting closer with each passing moment. Danny's cries had attracted even more of them, creating a feeding frenzy of undead shoppers, all focused on their small group of survivors. "The freezer section," Robert suddenly said, his eyes lighting up with desperate inspiration. "The walk-in freezers. They can't get through those doors if we lock them from the inside." It was risky, but staying put meant certain death. They abandoned their barricade and made a final desperate run through the grocery aisles. The infected pursued them like a hungry mob, knocking over displays and trampling anything in their path. Sarah reached the heavy freezer door first, yanking it open as a blast of Arctic air hit them. They tumbled inside among the hanging sides of beef and frozen turkeys, pulling the door shut just as the first infected reached them. The heavy lock clicked into place, and suddenly the moaning was muffled by thick insulated walls. But their relief was short-lived. The freezer was a dead end. There was no other exit, no way out except back through the door they'd just locked. They were safe for now, but they were also trapped. "Look," Marcus said, pointing to a service ladder near the back of the freezer. "That leads to the roof access. If we can get up there." The ladder was old and rusty, probably used for maintenance on the refrigeration units, but it was their only chance. One by one, they climbed up through a small hatch that opened onto the store's roof. The cold November air hit them like a slap, but it was the sweet smell of freedom. From the rooftop, they could see the parking lot below, filled with abandoned cars and wandering infected, but also clear paths to escape. Fire trucks and police cars were arriving, their flashing lights cutting through the darkness. Help was coming, but would it be enough? Sarah looked back at the store one last time. Through the skylights, she could see the infected wandering aimlessly through the aisles, searching for prey that was no longer there. Black Friday had become something else entirely, a day when shopping became survival, and the biggest bargain was simply staying alive. They climbed down the emergency ladder on the building's exterior, finally reaching solid ground. As they ran toward the approaching emergency vehicles, Sarah couldn't help but think that some sales really weren't worth it. But they had survived the Black Friday apocalypse, and sometimes that was the only deal that mattered. As the survivors caught their breath in the parking lot, watching the emergency responders struggle to contain the chaos inside Walmart, they realized they had witnessed something that would change Black Friday forever. What started as America's biggest shopping day had become a reminder that some deals come with a price too high to pay. Sarah looked at her bandaged arm, knowing she'd carry the scars of that night for the rest of her life. Marcus still gripped his baseball bat, unable to let go of the weapon that had saved them all. Lisa held Danny close, grateful that her son was too young to understand the horror they'd just survived. And Robert clutched Martha's purse tighter, the only piece of his wife he had left. The official reports would later blame a gas leak for the hallucinations and violent behavior. The government couldn't let the truth get out, that something had gone terribly wrong in that Walmart, something that turned ordinary shoppers into flesh-hungry monsters. The store was demolished within a month and the site remains empty to this day. But those who survived know the real truth. They know that on that Black Friday night, the dead walked among the living in the fluorescent-lit aisles of retail hell. They learned that when society breaks down, it doesn't matter how good the deals are. Survival is the only currency that counts. Some say if you drive past that empty lot on Black Friday night, you can still hear the echoes of screaming shoppers and the shuffle of infected feet on linoleum floors. Others claim it's just the wind, but the survivors know better. They know that some bargains are too dangerous to hunt and some sales are truly to die for. The Black Friday apocalypse was over, but the nightmare would live on in their memories forever. Because when the undead rise in the aisles of America's favorite store, there's no return policy for terror, and some shopping trips become a fight for your life. What do you think? Would you risk it all for those Black Friday deals, or would you stay home safe and sound? Let me know in the comments below. Have you ever experienced anything terrifying during Black Friday shopping? Maybe not zombies, but we've all seen how crazy those crowds can get. If you enjoyed this spine-chilling tale of retail horror, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest horror stories. And hey, drop a comment with your favorite horror topic. Whether it's haunted places, urban legends, supernatural encounters, or apocalyptic scenarios like this one, we read every single comment and your suggestions might just inspire our next terrifying adventure. Don't forget to share this video with anyone brave enough to handle some serious scares. Until next time, stay safe out there, and maybe think twice before fighting over those doorbuster deals. You never know what might be lurking in the aisles, waiting for the perfect moment to turn your shopping trip into a nightmare. Sweet dreams and happy shopping, if you dare.